Yeah, it's interesting because now you really got my mind turning on back to the lean principles, right? Where we want to focus on flow and we want to continuous improve and we want to make those things happen. However, you can't do that if you're dealing with defects. Because the I call it the mama muda, right? The mother waste. Then there's 8 wastes, but the one waste that generates all the other waste is overproduction.
Welcome to the BIM Heroes podcast. On this episode, we'll be discussing the state of lean construction. Hey, Adam.
What's up, Cody? How are you?
Good. Just wanted to start out like we always do and talk a little bit about your career and introduce yourself.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Well, I certainly appreciate this opportunity to get back with you, man. It's been like, I don't know, a dozen years or so since we've hung out. And you, my friend, look like you've matured quite a bit. I've seen a lot of these podcasts just in preparation, kind of figuring out what I'm getting myself into. And I love the journey you're on, and I'm super happy and proud to be participating and to know you as a professional. So we'll start there. I really appreciate this opportunity, Mr. Whitelock. Um, my name is Adam Hoots. I am quite the character. We'll start there. My construction career started at 17 when my dad gave me a nice big professionally wrapped gift for my 17th birthday. And I knew it was the keys to my brand new Mustang because I had wanted a Mustang forever. And, I was 17. I was responsible. I was going to get it. Nope. It was a pair of boots, a hard hat, a vest, and everything I needed to be safe on a construction site with a stack of job applications. And so, for whatever reason, I chose to be a plumber. I went and was a plumber for that summer and basically anytime I had off of high school, and it sucked. It was terrible. I had some miserable experiences. And so I often say I failed as a plumber and I became a general contractor. So I went to the University of South Florida, got a degree in public and cultural communications. I joined Whiting Turner right out of school and traveled the country for 12 years building primarily high-tech clean rooms, labs, life science type buildings. I did meet you at Clemson Core Campus. You were, I think, an intern with us at the time, before you came on board. And I just, there, we did a lot of traveling at Whiting Turner. We had some leadership that I don't really feel like invested personally. And so I was being asked to do quite a bit in a bunch of different locations, and my family was super happy in Greenville. So I actually quit Whiting Turner, joined DPR, worked with DPR for almost 4 years. In that time, we did some BMW work. I learned tact planning with the Germans at BMW, which we did a lot of 4D scheduling, bringing them back into the mix here. Uh, and then I realized, like, hey, it's not just one organization that doesn't really care about people and, investing in construction folks, specifically, boots on the ground. It's really the industry as a whole. And so from there, I created my own organization. I call myself a lean coach. Some people call me a consultant. And I was able to, work with a smaller contractor and start my own business where I can help bring respect back to the trade workers, help empower them, give them a voice, help leadership organize specifically schedules, meetings, run more effective meetings, and that sort of thing. And I found lean when I was at DPR. Actually, funny story. Um, I was I discovered lean as I was on kidney dialysis for almost a year and a half. And this was at Whiting Turner just before the Clemson project. I also add we failed miserably with lean at the Clemson project for whatever that's worth. And there is a great case study out there that I just finished as a part of my thesis for my master's degree. Um, but so I'm on dialysis and I'm like fearing death. Like, oh my gosh, I know I only have like, you know, a year left. This sucks. I hate it. Like, it was just, I was not in a good place mentally. And I started looking up like what happens when you die. And I started finding like the word value and what do you value? What do you appreciate? This bucket list thing. What do you want to get done before? And how do you maximize your time while you're here? And I discovered this whole lean thing. Um, Fast forward that going into December, I had a kidney transplant January 7th, actually 2014. And when I woke up out of that kidney transplant, I got a call from Mr. Woods, who we both know pretty well. And he said, "You're going to Clemson." And um, again, I had discovered this lean, this Japanese way of, this icky guy, finding your purpose, your reason for being on earth. Um, and then I got this phone call that said, "Hey, you're going to Clemson. You're gonna be the lean champion." And which was like looking back on it, the antithesis of what you're able to do with lean. And so, from life saved, my mother gave me a kidney transplant on that day. And as I woke up, I just have been in heaven ever since, really, right? I've got a great job. Clemson's welcomed me as a professor and a student. I've got, I'm working with IPI right now as an owner's rep on a mega project that's for 2 years. I've got a great role there. My wife is super hot. My kids are very well behaved, athletes, like the whole nine. So honestly, Cody, I've been just in heaven, man. Like since experiencing that kidney transplant, I did have a little bit of a tough as I went into my own business, we had some insurance things going on. And so I had not wasn't able to get my rejection meds quite the same, despite getting them donated to me from the drug manufacturer, but the transfusion center wanted a significant amount of anyway, had some issues there and went back on dialysis for 9 months, and just a year ago on Labor Day, received a second kidney transplant that's just got me, like, fired up, loving life again, like, just excited and happy to be here. So, sorry for that novel there, but that's me in a nutshell, start to finish, and I know I left some things out that maybe will be discovered as we continue talking here.
No doubt. And one of the biggest things about lean in general is there's a lot of uh, preconceived notions. Some, don't want to change in the industry with the times that we live in and the industry that we live in. Let's start talking about like the principles of lean, and then we'll get into what the state of lean is today.
Okay. Yeah, I think so people hate change, right? Like that's a guaranteed. We get set in our routines, we kind of hit this norm and um we just we don't like when things change or when things are different. Um However, we only learn things when things change. We get uncomfortable and we're able to make things more efficient. We're able to learn better ways of doing things, and we only do that to discover, a new world. I often think of like the yin and yang symbol, right? And the piece going down the middle, that's like the line between order and chaos. And so the more that you can dive in and understand the chaos and feel or bring more of that chaos to order, the more your line shifts, right? People often talk about the comfort zone and what stops us from getting outside our comfort zone. It's that fear zone. It's that fear of the unknown. It's the fear of the chaos. And so trying to explore or flirt with that line and experiment and learn things only grows your comfort zone and shrinks your fear zone. And when you get through that fear zone, you get into that learning zone and that growth zone. And that's just you're hitting your flow state where things are going fast and happening. You don't even realize you've been in this podcast for 40 minutes already and you're just enjoying yourself, right? And so from a principle of lean, I think, depending on where you look, there's a bunch of different ones out there. In my book, we're doing things for people, um, and respecting those people at all times, right? So if we're wanting to introduce change into an organization or into a project site, and that change doesn't benefit people, we are wasting their time and we are disrespecting the whole principle of lean. I feel like sometimes people do lean to people, not for people or with people. People take, and this is exactly what I was doing at Clemson when we first tried this whole lean thing. It was like, man, I read all those white papers, I read a bunch of books, and I was like, I'm about to do lean to this project, right? Like we are about to do this. Um and it doesn't work that way. You can't take lean and force a project to fit the lean manual, right? It just doesn't work that way. You have to take lean and the principles and adjust them to fit what your project needs. And that is one of the most powerful lessons that I've got out of kind of the practicing for the last, 10, 15 years, whatever it's been. Um, and there are kind of these official like principles of lean, right? According to LCI, it's optimize the whole, generate value, eliminate waste, focus on flow, and continuously improve. And, you know, okay. And those are all, again, for the betterment of people. And it's funny, Cody, a lot of times, like, we, lean principles are counterintuitive, right? How many times have you shown up to a project site and the mechanical ductwork contractor, sheet metal guy is like, I want the whole floor. I gotta have the whole floor. And it's like, timeout. You can't have the whole floor because we work in small batches. We limit our work in process and we finish things as we go, all because we want to respect the people doing the work. And when you're able to do that and work in smaller batches, you can flow the project better. Now we can optimize the whole. Now we can truly generate value and eliminate the waste, right? But we're doing that because we care about the people. We don't want ductwork on the whole floor where people are walking inside and out, driving lifts all over the place. Shit's getting, excuse my language. I'm a construction guy, sorry. Stuff's getting damaged, stuff's going missing, right? Like all of these things happen on our job sites, and it's a result of going against the principles. And it's a bit of a counterintuitive approach. Another thing, right? Counterintuitive. Like I want to be a leader on the job, so I have to know everything and I have to tell everybody what to do. No, I'm sorry, time out. That's bullshito, right? The greatest leaders on project sites, yeah, they've got a good idea what needs to happen. Yeah, they've got a great idea where the project needs to know, or I'm sorry, where the project needs to go. But the way they generate buy-in and they get people going isn't by telling, screaming, yelling, throwing their hard hat like I thought it was back in the day. It's more asking questions. It's more that Socratic method. It's more teaching people how I think through the questions I ask them and through the thoughts that they're able to generate through interactions with me. And so, again, a lot of this stuff is counterintuitive and goes a lot against things that we've learned kind of growing up through the industry. But, I you know, when you're able to experiment, grow, and learn, go through that fear of like, "Hey, what do people think of me? And am I gonna do it right?" No, you're not always gonna do it right, but as long as you're doing it and learning and able to take the student learner mindset into everything that you do, you're gonna get better. And as long as you truly, truly care deeply about people and you challenge them directly, man, that's the principles in lean that really get me going.
What do you think the state of lean is today and where it could go potentially just in the next 5 years?
Oh, man. It's a great question. I love it. I think people are sick and tired of the word lean. I think there's crazy people like me that wear it on their shirt, different hat today, but wear it on their hats a lot. Um, I think, lean is that four-letter word that less employees are needed, right? No, that's not what it stands for. Or people think it's like, oh, we're just doing more with less, right? No, that's not it either, quite honestly. And so I hate the word, quite honestly. I'm developing a little bit of hatred for it. Um, because it's nothing new, right? They in the late 1800s, they called it scientific management. And then in the early 1900s, they started calling it progressive management. And then, you get into this, this manufacturing, I forget the term that they called it during the manufacturing revolution, but and then you get into like total quality management, and then you get into the Toyota production system, and then you like guess what? It's all the same shit. They just listen to the people, empower the people closest to the work to make the work better, to get more things done, right? Like that. And so I believe that there's too many lean consultants, and I use that word intentionally, that are out there spreading all this bullshito about how you have to do this way and this process. And, it's kind of like everybody knows what pool planning is. But not many people know that that's just one small component of the last planner system as a whole. And so if you're just pool planning, great, like you're having some wonderful conversations, but doesn't marry up to the schedule, doesn't marry up to your CPM or tax schedule. Are you learning from your failures? Are you pulling metrics on what you actually are getting done? Are you breaking the work down into minor goals? Are you able to use that pool plan to pull out, make work ready? Like there, so I think people use it kinda haphazardly. I think people are taking lean and pulling out the things that they feel like they can make more money with. I feel like, there's a general misconception that lean, in fact, again, I'll reference my thesis, and I had 100 and almost 120 people fill out my survey. And one of the questions that I had was an open-ended question that said, "Hey, how do you define lean construction?" I was just curious, and I think it's like less than 12% of people use the words respect or care or respect for people. Uh, and over 90% of the people used words like continuously improve, eliminate waste, and increase efficiencies. And so to me, that tells me quite honestly, the state of lean is and it's such a fact that we're using it to make more money. We're not using it to take care of the people. And to me, as I stated in my paper, that's bullshito, right? That's not acceptable. And it will never take lever. It will never take over your organization. You will not experience organizational transformation if you're using lean tools, lean mindsets, lean principles. If you're using anything lean other than to make people's lives better, it will fail. And Bob Emiliani, one of my favorite authors on lean failure, he wrote a book called Irrational Institutions. And in that book, he says between 2.5% and 5% of lean organization transformations are successful. And I'm a firm believer that's why he's got another one called the Triumph of Classical Management over Lean Management, how tradition prevails and what to do about it. And in that book, he says, the main reason lean is failing is because leaders fail to give up their status, rights, and privileges that they've earned through the years as a leader. So when you think about that, I think that's the perfect explanation of, where are we as an organization? It's leader or I'm sorry, as an industry with regards to lean, it's leaders don't want to give up their status, rights, and privileges to roll their sleeves up and go be a part of the pool plan and go lead the pool plan. They want to, like was done to me, they want to say, Cody, you're the lean champion. You go do this lean stuff. You're empowered. And it's like, time out. It doesn't work that way because if you really want organizational transformation and you really want that lean stuff to work, you as a leader, sir, have to come to the job site and you have to lead the pool plan and you have to go read the white papers and you have to enable your superintendents to do different experiments to try and be okay, create an environment where they can fail, right? That's another one where we are really, really bad at creating environments that criticize and make fun of people. And again, I'm far from this like hippy dippy tree hugging yipper kind of guy, right? Like I am an old school hard nosed builder. Put your 60 hours in. And so, but in doing that, we've got to create these environments as leaders where people feel safe to speak up and tell us, look, I don't think you should do it that way. We should try X, Y, or Z. So, as far as the state of lean construction, it could be better. I will speak a little bit more positive now because it does get me fired up, and I do kind of take this negative mindset. I do have a bit of a bias because I have fought with a lot of people about this. In fact, I co-authored a book called The Old Dog Lean Thesaurus with Buddy Brumley, who's since passed. God rest his soul, man. I miss that guy every single day. Um, the but we wrote that book because there's a lot of people, a lot of old dogs out there already doing lean stuff. And the last thing you need is some, young, fired up lean consultant to come in here and tell you that you're not doing it right. You need to call it this, call it that. So we wrote that book of the 33 most popular lean terms that were broken down from an old dog superintendent and a lean geek's perspective. So you can kind of find the happy medium between the two and realize that, hey, you're probably already a lean builder if you're pretty good at what you do. So, um, but to take more of a positive kind of flip the mindset to it, I think this younger generation that's coming up is really forcing us to do things different, right? They don't respond to the throwing, screaming, yelling, superintendent anymore. It's more of like a, "Yeah, you got it here" amount, right? If you want a workforce, you better sit down, ask some questions, and really, really listen. Or, the stats are out there, and anywhere you look, it's between 5 and 7 to 1 our people are leaving our industry versus coming in. A rate of 5 to 7 to 1 coming in. So for every 7 that leave, 1 comes in. Those aren't good numbers, and those are forcing us to change our behaviors and act in different ways. Again, experimenting with ways to keep a workforce, to get additional young people into the workforce, and really to just, hold us accountable for not being jerks, right? Like, we have gotta do better as an industry, myself included. Like, I am the first one to blame myself. Like, I even walked past somebody on a job site yesterday and didn't say, "Hello, good morning, how are you?" Right? Like, so it's on me as a leader as well. But we have got to give up our status, rights, and privileges. We gotta go in the field, have lunch out there, learn about these people, and really understand where they came from. And I'll tell you what, you wanna build a high performing team, that's the greatest way to do it is to go get to know them, so that you have, intimate connections so that people would run through walls for you. So, as far as state of lean construction, we got a lot of work to do. We got a lot of people to take care of. We gotta start seeing through some of just the check the boxes stuff. We talked a little bit about this before we got going. It's not about checking the box, "Yep, we're doing lean." No, it's about helping people critically think about how they can do things better, faster, more efficient, and with ultimate total respect for the individual.
So that leads me to this thought. A lot of the things that we talk about now is based upon analytics. And I think sometimes we go so far into the analytics that we lose the human side of what we're doing. So it is that fine balance of looking at the industry differently through analytics, and trying to get more to the sports analogy of, the Billy Bean type situation where every single person can be analyzed by the way that they work, versus empowering them in high power teams. Explain that mentality and then how that relates to lean.
Yeah, I love it. Right? How boring would a basketball game be if there was no scoreboard? Right? You didn't know how many timeouts were. You didn't know what the score was. You didn't know how much time was left. Like, that's what we're doing to our people in the field, right? Like, they don't know if they're winning or losing on a daily basis. They don't know what we're trying to achieve on a daily basis. Like, to to me, everything you just said, like the sports analogy, what do sports people do, right? After they play a game, they pause and they reflect on the game and they watch the game. They watch every play, they analyze every play, and they're able to make adjustments in the next game that they play. What do we do in construction? We start a job and we go, 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 overtime, overtime, oh, we can. And then maybe we get to the end of a job. And some people, before you even get to the end of the job, are starting another job 3 quarters of the way through. And you're going, 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 right? And we don't ever stop. We don't ever pause and reflect. We don't stop and we say, hey, is what we're doing working or not? And if the answer is yes, great, let's do more of it. But if the answer is no, which typically is going, you're going to find some things that aren't working. Stop doing it. Find something else. Try something else, right? And so there's this lack of pausing and reflecting in our industry to make adjustments, right? And I love to have, call it plus delta sessions or plus delta epiphany or pause and reflect. Like I call it a bunch of different things. Start, stop, continue exercises. Like there's a bunch of things that you can do, but we've really just got to take some time to stop and think about what we're doing. And is it working? Is it not? What should we change? What should we continue? And analyze how we're doing. Yeah, and to speak to the analytics side of things, I find it very interesting because we're full of dashboards, we're full of Power BI and that sort of thing now. But are we measuring the right things? Right? Like I can have on the job site I'm on now, we're measuring the status of foundations, right? But we're measuring um the number of foundations, not the cubic yards of concrete, right? And that could be a totally different, right? So I could have 75% numerically done of my foundations, right? Just total. But guess what? I don't have 75% of my cubic yards poured. I only have 50% of my cubic yards poured. So I might be 75% done number wise, but effort wise, I still have another 50% to do. So, and not just that, but now let's start talking about optimizing the whole, right? Like, let's get back to those lean principles and like, okay, just because I have 75% of my foundation count done, am I ready, right? Do I have the right 75% that allows my steel contractor to come in and put steel on them, right? So now, I might have 75%, but guess what? My steel guy wants to start in that 25% that I don't have done. And so now my flow efficiency is interrupted. So yeah, it might look analytically like I'm performing, but from a flow efficiency standpoint, I'm not performing at all. And so, I believe one has to be very careful with statistics, numbers, analytics. I think um, to really get to understand for the health of a project, I think you really need to go deeper than just numbers, right? Numbers can lie every day. Numbers can you can make them say anything you want, quite honestly. And I know there's probably some mathematicians or scientists out there that are cringing at me right now, like want to debate it. And I'm sorry, like I can make numbers do whatever I want them to do, but I just think we need to be careful with analytics, and we really need to understand what are we measuring, and that kinda takes you into the whole, leading indicator, lagging indicator, right? Everybody loves to talk about KPIs, key performance indicators. Well, what about KPAs, the actions, the key performance actions that we're taking that are adjusting those indicators, right? And so, um again, it's a slippery slope with statistics and me, and I don't math well. Like, math's not my thing, Cody. You're probably I see you laughing over there at me with, you being a civil engineer, and that's fine. You can calculate around me, but again, I really think we've got to kind of focus on the whole thing and not really get too buried down in the numbers.
Yeah. And I think one of the big things looking at analytics as a whole is going back to this simple principle of procurement and scoping of work and scheduling of work and then delivery of work and then installing of work. And that whole process, I feel, is one of the biggest challenges, and it has been in our industry.
Yeah,
Talk a little bit about some of the principles that could assist us in making that.
yeah, I think there's a concept that's missing there, right? Like, there's this concept of buying, procuring, or I'm sorry, designing, buying, procuring, scheduling, executing. We're missing something between scheduling and executing, and that to me is planning, right? There's a big difference between a schedule and a plan. A schedule tells me I need all of the rough in for the fourth floor done by 12/25/24, right? Christmas Day, I gotta have all the rough end done on the fourth floor. It's like, okay, great. It gives me some direction, some vision. But guess what? There's a lot of stuff to rough in, right? We're roughing in walls, we're roughing in conduit, sheet metal, pipe. I'm sorry, sprinkler pipe, process pipe, plumbing pipe, controls. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff to rough in. So who goes first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh? Where are we starting this train? How many rooms should we do in a day? How do we get everybody moving the same speed at the same distance apart such that we can not experience interruption? Where are our buffers? Where are our time buffers, right? We want to have a little bit of time just in case that old variation comes up. Because guess what? We've never done a job or an activity on a job site without having variation. So it happens. We need to plan for it. Not only time buffers, but where's my capacity buffer? So when that thing happens, I know exactly where I can put my people where they won't affect the next trade. And do I have enough material, people, and equipment to keep them busy? Um, and so I think there's this whole kind of, okay, great. We have a design, we've bought it out, we've got stuff here, we have a schedule, go execute. We're not doing the executors very much justice when our schedule is at this 30,000 foot. We've got to help them break that thing down to understand, exactly everything we just mentioned and listen to them and be willing to feed that information back upstream and make modifications that make sense to allow the work to flow easier. I think flow is the word um, that really hits me between the eyes, like especially when we start talking about lean, because when you think about flow, you know, design flows, people flow, work flows, money, cash flows, information flows, logistics flow, material flows, jobs flow, right? Like flow is everything in what we do. When people get into the flow state, right? We talked about a little bit about that earlier. Things happen and they go so fast, you didn't even realize how much fun you were having, right? So flow is everything. And how do we create these environments of flow on the job site where it's just fun to be at the job? I want to come to work on Saturday. I want to come there on Monday because that guy Hoots is going to be singing, dancing, laughing, enjoying, trying to figure out how we get better as a team, as an organization. And that's fun, right? So as again, it falls back to leaders as, how do we create environments that are fun, that flow, that have very, very clear targets so that people can go home and be like, honey, I won today. Like I was victorious. And we do that through those scoreboards, right? Whatever that scoreboard looks like to you. I personally, I love to measure trust on projects. I think that's a very important metric. I think we have a lot of those key performance indicators that are dedicated towards exactly what I just said, performance, right? Like, how quick do we get RFIs back? How fast do we get submittals back? How many are outstanding? Like, versus how much does the electrician trust the general contractor? Or how much does the general contractor trust the owner, right? Those to me are key performance indicators that are going to tell us whether we're winning or not. Um, Even just a sign out there that says, "Hey, framing crew, we're trying to get up 250 linear feet of, 6-inch studs today. That's our goal. Let's see if we can make it or not." Everybody loves a little bit of competition. And so how do we gamify this thing to kind of get some energy around what we're doing, get some excitement and build it and get people in that flow state to really grow and learn as a human?
Yeah, spot on. I mean, I think that's where the analytics is where you'll gain the most value. One of the things that we look at the company I work at Barnhill is we want to look at not only how we work in that flow, but how the sub worked throughout the project because we're going to work with a very similar subgroup and sub base over time, and then ultimately, back to that client value and how do they see us in this like CX version of trying to figure out their experience. And I really think, like you said, it's that work process flow, that what experience you're providing for your client, for your people, and for the people that work through the subs to build the project.
You nailed it, man. I mean, when you're able to visualize it, right? Like, because normally when we're trying to negotiate schedule or money or something like that, the issue is between me and you. But when we're able to visualize something, put it on the wall and show it, now it's not just like me versus you. Now it's me and you versus that thing, right? And that makes a huge, huge difference as far as being on the same team.
I feel one of the biggest challenges too is the project delivery, right? I think that we've come a long way in some of them, but I feel like it doesn't, a lot of owners are still hesitant to get away from the hard bit or get away from the design, bid, build, and go to something more of like integrated project delivery. Talk about your experience with that.
Yeah, I think people are concerned that they're not gonna get the best deal financially. Um, and I got news for you. I don't know if you've ever been on a lump sum hard bid job, but there sure are a lot of change orders on those things. And so when you look at it and add it up at the end of the day, you're likely going to be spending more than if you were to develop trust and partner in a contractor into your deal so they can really understand what you want. You're also going to end up with a better product, in my opinion, because you got people that are developing relationships that actually care about what you're receiving. I know you've heard this. You might have even heard it from me, Cody. Looks good for my house, right? Like, unacceptable, not acceptable, but when you hire a hard bid lump sum contractor, that's what you're gonna hear every day, and they don't care. They just wanna get it done and get out of there and get on to the next one. I think, our contracts are a major hurdle that prohibit us from collaborating. When you open up, an AIA contract and you really go and scan through it, you do it'd be an interesting exercise. Go do a quick search, do a control F for the word dispute or conflict, and you go see how many hundreds of times those words are used in our contract. And then go do a control F and find collaboration or trust or partnership. And you might find that once or twice in the contract. So right there, like right off the bat, we are set up to fail, right? Like our contracts are more about dispute resolutions than they are on how to build a team, and that's a huge problem in itself. And so, I do think that's a hurdle, um, but it's not an impossible hurdle, right? Like I've built plenty of projects without ever even touching the contract or the scopes of work, and it works, and it does work, and you don't necessarily have to have an integrated form of agreement for an IPD job. Although you're certainly, in my opinion, better off when you're able to do that and everybody's able to see it and understand it. But I think one of the things that's really helped me is as I approach projects with kind of this IPD growth mindset, is that we have a conditions of satisfaction conversation. So up front, like, hey, when this job's over, how do you leave satisfied? Like, what's important to you? And I think when we have those type of conversations across, different niches of people, right? When you get the trade partners, the vendors, you get the GCs, the owners, the designers in there, you start to realize that, hey, some people are in it just to make money, but others are in it for like a long lasting legacy, or more, maybe somebody's in it for this one piece of the building that's just their prized pet peeve. And then you can learn like, okay, what pieces about that are important. And so, um, again, we're driving alignment. We're driving like, how do we get to one place as a team, as an organization, as a unit, and to really drive success. So, you know, I don't know. I'm curious what your thoughts are. Let me flip the question back around to you. Where are you at on this?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing that we have to do, like you said before, is empower the teams. And we have to empower the teams so that they can go out and have those tough conversations with clients. Some that might be as sophisticated as BMW, all the way down to a local municipality that might not have a planning department. And I think it's one of the biggest challenges that we face going forward is it's not even the, uh, group of people that you're working with specifically on the construction project, but it's a whole 'nother group of people that are trying to manage it for the client that might not know what their ultimate. So trying to assist that and empower everybody to be the best, that they can be and do the job that they're there to do, I think is only gonna, help us in this industry.
Yeah, you can't really manage what you can't see. We've heard that before too. And I think a lot of times when builders are in that situation, exactly what you just said, we're not really building for the building user, right? The building user has hired a group to manage the construction. And so now there's another layer, another level in that system that just complicates it, that makes it harder to see through. So I love that, man. Great point.
I also think too that, one of the things that we have to understand is there is technology that will assist us, right? And we're in an industry that is hard to change on process. So just imagine throwing, some technology into the mix. And I think one of the biggest faults that we had in our industry is over the last 15 years, we've had so many different technologies that's trying to solve one niche of this or one niche of that. And it was already considered taboo to do something. If we could build the pyramids thousands of years ago without the technology that we had, what would we do today? But talk a little bit about what you've seen on the technology front. And I think one of the biggest disservices for technology companies that are trying to enter the industry and solve a workflow problem is that they have salesmen selling the product, but they have no idea what the industry that they're selling.
Man, dude, you're all over it. I think, man, technology is a problem, and you're right. There's literally a software for every issue we have in construction, and it's silly, and it's making things complex. And I put it this way: look, if technology is not helping the people in the field put more work in place, it's wasteful, and we don't need it. And I have kind of a simple brain when it comes to technology. Now, with that said, I do think there are technologies out there that are helpful. I think there's some up and coming material procurement softwares that are absolutely worth looking into. As we start using automated or artificial intelligence, and we're able to read from different sources, and we're able to pull that stuff together and get some critical thought into the algorithms. I get super excited about stuff like that. When you talk about, BIM, right? We're on a BIM podcast. I think just that technology has been absolutely amazing to help builders see what they're going to get into. I personally was not very excited about 4D. When I first learned about it, I'm like, what the hell do I need this? I can read a schedule and I can look at a model, but guess what? Not everybody can do that. And so 4D in my world has become very important and extremely important. And I credit Charlie Dunn for changing my mindset there, where being able to actually see things on a time scale is huge, hugely valuable for the builders. And so, you know, technology has certainly made this industry a bit more complex. Back in my day, I'm gonna sound like I walked both ways and bare feet uphill, but we used to, when we wanted to bid a project, we used to like package drawings and FedEx those to another office. And you better believe we were making sure that you were gonna bid that job if we were gonna spend $100 on drawings and then box it up and mail it to you. So, um, now it's like, man, I send a link to 9 million people and I don't really ever talk to them before. And so I think that's created some challenges. Um, I believe, just the access, right? The 24/7 access is always, really is really hurting us. You know, rules and regulations have gotten tougher. Um, and there's a software for that, right? Like, you know, I believe that this is contributing to some of the mental health problems in our industry, right? We are on all the time, right? I can get on Procore right now and look at all my dang RFIs, submittals, you know, anything I want. I'm in fact I probably got 5 RFIs from Easton waiting for me to read, right? And um like that's a lot of work and process, and that's a lot of things to focus on and think about, especially on a weekend, and it doesn't shut off. And so there are a ton of programs, and I don't want to be specific to any one or anything like that. I mentioned Procore because most are using that or something equivalent, CMIC or Prolog or whatever. Um, but I do think technology can help us, but it can also overwhelm us just the same. And so I go back to my original statement, like, is this technology going to help the people in the field put more work in place? And if the answer is yes, then we need to do it. And if the answer is no, then we don't need to do it. I will say that, there's, um, and again, I don't want to call out any specific softwares, but there's a guy named John Toots who's in Louisiana, and he's got a piece of software. And I hope y'all go look this up because I'm not even going to give it to you. But he's got a piece of software that enables every worker on the project site to give direct feedback to the leaders on the site. I believe something like that is what we need in this industry to really change the integration or the empowerment levels and to really drive trust on our jobs. Again, if we want leaders to give up their status rights and privileges as a leader, then they need to be informed on what it's like to be on like the forefront of the project site. Um, I, I I will tell you this. I got my drone license this semester, taking a class at Clemson with Dr. Burgett, which was awesome, by the way. Um, and I gained 10 pounds using that technology, right? Because I stopped walking the job site for a month. And I stepped on that scale and I was like, holy cow, like it's time to tighten up a little bit. And so now I've got a rule. Anytime I fly the job, I walk the job. And so, again, that's just another perfect example of how, yeah, I used technology and it made me lazy and it stopped my interaction with the trade workers. And so, did that technology help put more work in the field? No, no. Me getting my drone license did not help. It was super cool. I get paid to fly a drone around and take pictures. I can find high level status, but guess what? Me as a leader, did it help me give up my status, right, and privilege? Hell no. If anything, it gave me more status, right, and privilege because now I'm looking at it from 30,000 feet, right? And I'm flying down to the BLE inspector and I'm just sitting there shaking my drone no, right? Like, why are you sitting in your truck? Like, just, trolling them, if anything. But um, no, it didn't help the workers put more work in place. And so, you know, again, did it stop me from flying the drone? No. I still take pictures every day, but I enforce my rule. When you fly, you walk. And so I think it's really important that we embrace and leverage technology and we don't be afraid of it. But I also feel like there's this part that we need to call out when it doesn't benefit or provide fruit to the workers. We got to really think about what we're doing and how we're using it.
Yeah, here's two great examples from my perspective, from two different fronts. One, going back to the 4D, and then I'll get your thoughts on both of them. The 4D, trying to explain this boring schedule, right? For years, all we did was print out P6 or a made up schedule, thousands of tasks, and says, "Oh yes, in the next 3 weeks, you need to get this done." And the sub looked right at you and said, "Yep, I can get it done." 3 weeks later, it's not done. Everybody gets back in the room and says, "Why isn't it done?" Nobody can figure out. But with the advent of 4D, you had the ability to actually see this is what you need to do in the next 3 weeks. Now, with visualizing that, can that physically be done? because I think that's a major benefit to actually visualize what has to be done versus looking at a schedule and say, can it be done? We just don't have that skill set built anymore to be able to look at a schedule and know that I need to be able to accomplish this, and this. That's one piece of it. And I see as the advent of 4D gets easier to put together and make, that process will definitely help and visualizing the depth. On the flip side, the design team. I will take it. I'll take a hit here for the design team. But one of the things that frustrates me is that we used to have to draw everything, right? We had to sit down and you had to put pen to paper. You weren't going to do that unless you were doing the right thing and you understood the detail. You understood the section. You understood how the job was going to be built. Now, what do? We use programs to do that work to make it more standard and to just flop stuff on a piece of paper. That's all fine and dandy for somebody to know how to do that. But if they don't understand how these complex systems come together, it's just it's a disservice to the people that are trying to learn how to design. So I think I want to get your thoughts on both of those examples and how that could improve both ways.
Yeah, I'm gonna start with the latter because CPM gets me fired up, and you just triggered something in me. So I'm gonna yeah, save that one for last. But so designers with software, when you were speaking, it really makes me think of the example that I mentioned with like bidding work, right? Like we were dang sure we were sending every drawing and you were bidding, right? Well, guess what? They were dang sure that they were going to draw it right and they were going to give you every detail that you needed. And that's changed, right? Where they have a library or family of typical details that they just toss in, and every job's got every typical detail, and I'm sure I got it covered somewhere in there. And God bless them because again, I think this is a great example of, hey, they have this new software, so they can have 6 projects, not just one, right? They don't have to draw a job for 6 weeks. They can just use that typical family. So their leadership is, putting more work on them because they have softwares that make their job easier, right? And I think it's interesting because now you really got my mind turning on back to the lean principles, right? Where we want to focus on flow and we want to continuous improve and we want to make those things happen. However, you can't do that if you're dealing with defects. Because the I call it the mama muda, right? The mother waste. Then there's 8 wastes, but the one waste that generates all the other waste is overproduction. Okay, because once I overproduce something, now I have an inventory of things. Well, when I have an inventory of things, inevitably those things become defective, whether they get dusty, broken, damaged, lost, whatever. And then when those things become defective, I've got to overproduce or I have to what do they call it? Not overproduce. Overproduction's one. Overprocess. So now I have to do some extra processing of that thing that was defective. Right now I'm walking back and forth or I'm clicking on this and that, trying to get it reworked. And all the meanwhile, people are waiting for that work, right? And while people are waiting, we're also underutilizing the talent of the designers because they're doing things that should have already been done. And so they're not, cleaning up their computers or filing files or making or working on the next job. They're doing stuff that was already done. And so we're just introducing kind of the 8 wastes by overloading somebody, by giving them software that makes them faster and overproduce. Well, guess what? They're generating more defects that they then have to go back and deal with through the 8 waste cycle. And so, yeah, again, it's a good balance, right? Like you want to leverage technology to make sure that you're able to move as fast as you can without defects. Same way we get in construction, right? When cordless drills came out, it's like, okay, Now we can do more work, but we can't have defects on the job, or else we're just causing ourselves additional variation. And we all know when we don't deal with variation, it gets worse. So that's my 2 cents on designers and software. It's a fantastic example. Um, but I also think it leads to kinda, and again, trying to build some more friends with architects out there because I need all those I can get. Um, they're now asked to perform more work and insert more defects and waste here. So, with regards to CPM, CPM sucks, right? Like you said, there are thousands and thousands of activities. Most CPM schedules are 100 plus pages, very data heavy. Sure, it has the Gantt chart on the side, but it's never printed in whole. You really can't read it. You can't see how it stacks up. It's very complicated. Um, and it does take a little bit of a niche. It takes a little bit of science to go and be able to read this thing, right? Like any CPM schedule I've ever really looked at, I've got to make my own Excel spreadsheet to pull out specific dates to be able to see and understand true flow of the project. So I am not a CPM fan, right? I am a tact planning fan. I love tact planning. I love the macro norm and micro levels of tact, and I'm a last planner system fanatic. Um, I will do CPM. I've done plenty of CPMs that have been successful, but I believe CPM fundamentally disrespects people. I feel like if we're not producing schedules where people can see trade flow, workflow, and logistical flow, we're missing the boat. I feel like when we make schedules 100 plus pages, nobody in construction is going to read that. It's like a spec. Nobody reads the specs unless we get into trouble, right? Like instructions, nah, no, thank you. We're builders. We know how to do this stuff. And, and not to mention, it's just not ever detailed enough. It's very much a copy and paste industry. It's very much, oftentimes missing the little nuances of a project. It's oftentimes, when we go to update schedules, it's kind of like, I'm about 65%, right? And it's not a very scientific deal. A lot
Or
of
they
time,
or they forget the procurement completely in the schedule. It's like, "Oh, how's it getting here?" Yeah, it's like, "Yeah, where's that?"
we don't have it. We can't build it, brother. Yeah. The other thing that I think is terrible practice is when we miss a date, or we were supposed to be finished and we didn't, we don't often pull all of our logic out with it. We usually will break some logic and just make it work, right? And we end up stacking activities. We end up working people too close to one another. We end up making demands that aren't realistic, and um, and that again, that's a fundamental problem. We're disrespecting people when we do that. Or the other thing that I see very common on job sites is just because the CPM schedule says, "Hey, we're supposed to start that activity," we send somebody out there and start that activity to say we're on schedule. But all that does is add to our work in process. And so now we have more things going on, which slows us down and takes our attention elsewhere. And so, there's 4 laws to production. Okay. Little's law, which is an actual calculation that you could probably do. I can't, but I know it does. It tells us 3 things. You work in small batches, you limit your work in process, and you finish things as you go. And quite honestly, we suck at all 3 of those in construction. And then there's a Kingman's formula. And again, it's a calculation. You can run the numbers. Kingman's formula tells us the actual time that it's going to take you to do your process is equal to the process time, so whatever time it takes to do the process uninterrupted, multiplied by variation, multiplied by your resource efficiency, right? Because we don't want our resources 100% efficient. That's not good, people. That's the classic problem of everybody should be busy. No, maybe 80 to 90% should be busy, but 10 to 15% should be planning for that next thing and making sure flow is ready to go. Um, so that's Kingman's formula. And then the other 2 are very simple, and you deal with them all day. The law of bottlenecks, which states, hey, every process, there's going to be a bottleneck. And once you clear that bottleneck, there's going to be another bottleneck. There's always a bottleneck, meaning the slowest thing in your process, and you can only optimize or go as fast as that bottleneck. And generally, what do people do? For the bottleneck, we force it, right? We force the work into the bottleneck. Get more done, get more done, get more done, instead of slowing down everything before the bottleneck such that the bottleneck can flow uninterrupted. And then the last one is the law of variation, which basically says, hey, shit's gonna happen. And when you allow it to happen, you better swarm it and deal with it immediately, or else it's going to get worse. That's it, folks. Like those, if you follow those four laws of production, the production physics, you're going to be way more successful than I was throughout my career. So, again, I'm a tact fan. I don't believe in CPM. I have made CPM work, but it hasn't been fun. It hasn't been pretty. And I've almost always taken my CPM and broken it out into a production plan, which consists of likely Excel or Post-it notes on the board.
Yeah, I'll back up a couple of steps, just some examples of what you just talked about. One, the looking at a spec book, for instance. So we talked about schedules, we talked about drawings. Spec books are notoriously where you would copy and paste to do something. I was on a job one time and we were going through the specs and I found something. So I went to the, project manager being a PE and I said, am I reading this right? Like, is this something that you would think that would be in this job? And, I'm looking through it again, and, brought it to them and they said, okay, we're going to, I think we need to bring this up the next time we talk to the design. We go to the design team, and it wasn't the OAC meeting, it was just us and them. Just like you said, we're not trying to throw anybody under the bus. We're just trying to be the most effective and build the best product that we can. And we're in the meeting, and we said we got a real scope question. When we were in the specs, it called out for a swimming pool, but there's no swimming pool on this job. And, the architect kinda takes a step back. They're like, "Where's the swimming pool?" It's in the specs. And the specs that you've copied and pasted was from another job. And, the sub is reading through that, and they've bid on a swimming pool, even though the swimming pool isn't in the project. So that whole philosophy, I think, is really interesting. And I also think, the other principle that I always try to live by too is we have a lot of fires in construction. My thing that I tell everybody when they're coming into this crazy industry that we live in that's going 500 mile an hour all the time is ask yourself, what type of fire are you fighting? Is it the fire that is on your desk and you're putting a candle out? Or is it the fire that's burning the whole city down? And then you'll know how to fight that fire and who you bring along to fight it. What do you think of those two examples?
Man, I freaking love it. So I also have a podcast. We call it the Lean Builder, Hoots on the Ground with No Bullshito. And I once did a podcast on the Eisenhower matrix. Are you familiar with that? The important and urgence. Um, and it's like a diagram, right? And you have high importance and low importance, and you have low importance and I'm sorry, low urgency and high urgency. And so oftentimes when things have high importance and they're highly urgent, those are the fires that you're talking about. I've never really thought about, is it a candle burning on your desk or is the building on fire? I love that analogy. My mind, when I did that podcast, went to who started the fire, right? Where did the fire come from? Because I feel like oftentimes as builders, especially superintendents, and please don't be mad at me, soups, you start your own fire, right? Like you're the firefighter, yeah, but you're also the arsonist. And that takes a really deep reflection to think about that and then to do something about that because, Firefighters are heroes. Our industry, for whatever reason, likes to reward people that work 60, 70, 80 hours a week, who come in and save the project, right? But generally, those people are the same people who are responsible for lighting those fires and for like the project being in that position in the first place. So why the hell are we rewarding that, people? Like, are you your own firefighter arsonist? And again, that's a tough question to answer. Like, how did I contribute to that fire? And so, but I absolutely love, like, how are you gonna like fully dress up? You bring in the gang, or are you gonna be able to blow that thing out real quick, right? And guess what? This kind of goes with that law of variation, because if you let that dang candle burn on your desk, it's probably going to catch that piece of paper on fire. That piece of paper might then catch that desk on fire. Might catch your field office, and then your whole trailer or your whole building's burning down. So, if you don't extinguish these fires quick, your building's gonna be on fire faster than you know it. So, um, I mean, again, you just kind of struck a nerve, and I love the idea, because all too often we're fighting fires. Right, but us as leaders should really be in dealing with those things that are highly important but not urgent. Um, and then the things that aren't urgent and aren't important, we shouldn't be doing, and those things that are not important but urgent, we should be delegating. And so we really got to think about, those kind of things. And I'm sorry, man, I forgot the first example that I was supposed to respond to, because you got me so fired up with this.
Nah, that one's a great one. I should have led with that one. But the other one is going back to the topic that you discussed, which was this over reliance on copy and paste and not thoroughly going through. And that was the example of the pool where there was a pool that's in the project, but there's no pool at all in the project at all. And the subs went, and their responsibility is I'm supposed to read through the drawings, and I'm supposed to read through the specs, and I'm supposed to give you a price. And at the end of it, here's the price for the pool. And there's about 55 RFIs, pre-bid RFIs, asking what this pool is, what type of pool, how I'm getting the water to the pool. And everybody's like, where's this pool at?
But so, yeah, quick reflection on that one. I think you have really great trade partners, because I think a lot of times that probably would have went, missed, totally missed in the job. And then the owner's coming back to you, Cody, saying, "Hey, man, where's my pool at, bro? It's in the specs, you know?" Um, yeah, the other thing that, it drives me nuts, they put finish schedules in the specs, or
Oh, God, that's terrible.
door height that's in the spec, right? Like, they hide these little nuggets all over the place, which are a little bit frustrating for us as the builders. And I think there's oftentimes this like this GC designer meeting that's missing, because we could help streamline their design if they would just ask us, "Hey, Hoot, say Cody, what details do you need?" Right now, let me guess what details are needed. But what details do you need? Which, like, because we know how to dang run a dang RC, reflected or an ACT, right? We don't know how to run the we know how to run the ceiling grid up to the drop. We know that detail. We don't need that detail. It's a waste. Just get it out of here. But, where the flashing comes at the bottom of the metal panels, or where the metal panel meets the curtain wall and the brick, like, we need those details. Those ones are important to us. So,
But, they don't wanna touch that, right? They wanna delegate it because, unfortunately, for the design world, and I have respect for them, it's a tough world. I was told one time by, an owner, um, that I don't understand what I'm paying them to do because all they're providing is the instructions to build the job. I was like, "I think you just answered your question," right? You have to it's pretty darn important to have the instructions on how to build the job. But I also think on the flip side of that too is that I think that designers sell the Taj Mahal, and us as builders, we'll build the Taj Mahal. There's not one builder in the world that won't build that. But you don't understand your client. And all we're saying is we don't want to be the bad guy. And we're there to help you trying to understand how these details go together because ultimately at the end of the day, like you just said, with metal panel and how that ties in with the waterproofing of the job. You don't wanna own that, but that's one of the most critical parts of the whole project. The life cycle of that building for that owner goes right out the door. Who cares what the finish on the ceiling and the floor looks like if the building is a sickly building? And I think that we as GCs have to really, get involved in that as early as we can. And maybe with the change of delivery methods and assisting them and in that process. But however they want to say it, design assist, delegated design, all you are is you're just delegating the rest to everybody. And at the end of the day, the client is not getting what they asked for. And what they asked for is not always there to win an award. Sometimes for a school system, it's to have a school system for students to learn in. And then there's always going to be that job that comes along that the owner has, as we talk about the big three: quality, time, and money. And if you only get one of those today, you're lucky. And I just think that that's a piece of this that is misunderstood or overlooked, is that it's just as important to go all the way back to the root of the problem, and that is to work together as a team, empower the teams to do what they're good at, continuously improve that young person that's coming out of school that you expect to use the product to build something, but they have no idea how it comes. So why are you giving them that ultimate responsibility as a person to a person that they have the ability to do it in the technology, but they have no ability to actually understand the actual connection and instruction?
Amen. Dude, you just struck a bunch of nerves. So yeah, we can build a Taj Mahal, Mr. or Mrs. Designer, but give me my money, right? Like that's important. You gotta have the money. And then when it comes to those specs, like when I do quality control programs now, like when we write full on QC for a project, I am constantly looking for two things when I'm doing that, right? It's what is the prescription of the quality, right? And you can find that in the contract documents, probably buried in the third section of every spec titled quality control, and this is what we expect. But those are just like you said, copy and paste. And so the second and most important piece to a quality plan is the descriptive expectations. And guess what? You're not going to find those in the specs. You're not going to find those in the drawings. You're only going to find those through conversations with the designers because you just can't write down what your descriptive expectation is, right? And generally those are some of the pet peeves that I talked about. And so when we think about quality on a job, I would encourage people to think about it in two ways. What is the prescription and what is the description of what we're trying to do here? And then let's talk about the responsibility of a PE or an intern real fast because we got this messed up, y'all. Like when a new person shows up to our project site, who's the person doing the onboarding? The project engineer or the intern, right? Like that is the most powerful thing a leader could do is welcome the new person to the job. Hey, this is the culture. It's the leader you're going to be dealing with. It's the leader we're talking with. It's giving up my status, right, and privilege to send the intern to do the thing that I don't want to do because I've already done it 180 times. Well, guess what? That is the most important thing you can do is welcome new people to your job. Okay, let's keep talking about the responsibility of a new PE. What else do we give them? All the RFIs. Well, guess what an RFI is? Variation to your project. So you have variation and you're putting that variation in the hands of a project engineer just because they can work Procore really well or Prolog really well. Like and then what do we do? Submittal reviews. Who reviews and approves all the submittals? Like, it's the brand new project engineer out of school. Like, what are we thinking? If the thing shows up to the job site and it's not right, that's a problem. And we too often just rubber stamp submittals, just send them to the engineer, designers, And then what do? They stamp them and it says, "Hey, this is approved, but if it's wrong, it's still your problem," right? Like, and so, there's all these kind of um stages, these what do I want to call it? What's when you pass in the video games and you're passing like a race, what do they call that? Uh I don't know. Where you get more time. You know what I'm talking about, where you get more time on the race or whatever. It's a
Oh, yeah.
stage, a stage finish or whatever you wanna call it, and so all we're doing is just kicking the can down the road, and we're just giving these project engineers the most important tasks on a project, and it's essentially suicide. Like, why are we wanting to put our most important tasks in the hands of somebody who hasn't done this before? And shout out to all the brand new project engineers out there because honestly, they're doing a heck of a job. And it is the work that nobody wants to do, but it is absolutely the most important work that you're going to be doing. So don't rubber stamp, right? Dive in and ask as many questions as you possibly can until you fully understand it. Because guess what? If you've made it this far into construction, then you are absolutely going to be able to understand how the curtain wall comes together and how it interacts with the adjacent finishes. And I'll just drop this last word based on what we were talking about, right? A wise man once told me, and this is Perry Nicholson, and Perry works with Whiting Turner up in West Virginia. He's a self-proclaimed hillbilly. The guy wears nothing but a neon yellow safety collared shirt and overalls 7 days a week, and he only has 6 pairs, so don't ask him what he wears when he does laundry. Um, but what he told me was if you wanna find where a building is going to leak or where you have scope gaps, look where 2 phases or 2 contractors, 2 trades come together. You will always find your scope gap and a leak in your building there.
Yeah, it's spot on. I mean, I think going back to the PE and this concept of constructability, we put so much, power and influence in the role of being a PM and superintendent, right? But really, the power lies down in the trenches at the PE level. But what do? We put the most inexperienced person there. And then, as you discussed, to kind of bring it full circle, how do you have a high performing team where the leadership of the team doesn't want to educate and continuously improve the PE to go on? You're just creating a PM or a superintendent that is not naturally trained in an industry that requires you to be very good at a lot of different divisions and understand generally how all this works. And that's a year long commitment as a PE in a project, but the learning of the industry is a career. I mean, that's the piece that we miss, you know.
Amen, and think about what you're doing, you're training or conditioning that PE to be like, "Man, once I get to become a project manager, I'm just gonna do all like," and that's not good.
My final question to you is, what is the future of lean principle instead of just lean construction? Because there's a lot of great principles that come from it. And how do you think technology as a whole will impact that?
Yeah, I love it, and you're kinda, like, walking me right into my dissertation topic. I think the principles of lean construction in the future will be geared around systems thinking. I believe, when we fully understand systems thinking, that we will now have a detailed and enough detailed understanding of lean or scientific progressive management, whatever you wanna call it, of how to get people to convert into being a systems thinker. There are 2 types of systems. There's a virtuous system, which lives in perfect order and goes on forever because it has the right balancing loops and feedback loops. Then there's a vicious system, and the vicious system kind of spins out of control all over the place. And that's where we currently are right now. We don't have the right feedback loops. We don't have the right balancing loops. And we're not willing to experiment with changes to see how we can convert our vicious system into a virtuous system. Now there are leverage points when it comes to modifying or adjusting I'm sorry, um, there are leverage points when it comes to adjusting the vicious system into a virtuous system. And most of those, you get the most leverage when you're able to get people to see the world different. And so we want to change people's mental models, but we can only do that through, going down closer to the system and looking at these physical events that we're trying and seeing and understanding, are we affecting the system? And then we start looking for patterns and infrastructure that says, yeah, and then we start changing those patterns and changing people's behaviors. And then all of a sudden we get people to see the world difference. That's the only way that we're going to be able to change this broken system that we're living in. And some, like, God bless them, some of these trade workers are living in this system that is just tremendously broken, and they have no ability to be able to change or like modify the outcome of the system they're in. They show up to work and they have to do their thing every day. They use their body, not their brain. They eat lunch and they go home, and they've had a tough day, and we've got a lot of mental health problems, right? 5 times more likely to die by suicide than any other hazard on a job site. And our job sites are really dangerous sometimes, like all the time, right? It's ever changing. And so I think, to me, we hear a lot about silo thinking in the industry. Well, guess what the opposite of siloed thinking is? It's systems thinking. It's being able to understand, how do we optimize the whole? How do we not worry about just our work, but how do we worry about our work and its impact to other people's work? Um, with regards to technology and how we're going to kind of leverage that, um, I think we've really got to start measuring things that matter. And I think trust is the most paramount one of those. And that is what my dissertation is going to be on, right? It's a concept called the trust circle. And we've done this on several projects, started at BMW, where, we would just outline, hey, is there trust on this job? Does the GC trust all the trade partners? And if they do, they're in the circle. If they're in the circle, how close to their family or how close to the most trusted person in the world are they? And if they're outside the circle, why are they outside? List those reasons, because in construction, we love to go around. We love to talk about, hey, can you believe Cody? Like, I can't believe Cody didn't. He left his job site dirty and there were cups everywhere. Oh, hey, Cody, how you doing, man? Oh, yeah, everything's good. It's great. And it's like, no, like, hey, Cody, you left the job site dirty yesterday, brother. Like, if you do that again, I'm really losing trust for you right now, right? And then at the end of a month, like those trades that are the most trusted, let's celebrate them. Let's let those leaders give up their status rights and privileges. Let's let those leaders come in and cook lunch for them. Let's let them labor for the people who are laboring for the leaders every day. And when you do that, the amount of respect and trust and honesty, vulnerability, transparency comes forward, and we're able to change. So I don't think it's necessarily like a certain technology or a software or a one program that's going to change it. I think it's more of the technology of learning about humans, right? Like, how are we going to use technology as a feedback loop to our people in the field that are suffering, like Mr. John Toots, right? Like, his program is amazing. But how do we get more companies to experiment with that, to say, yeah, that is what we need, right? We do need to hear voices from the front lines so that we can adjust and make modifications on how we're moving forward and executing work. And like, that's the true value. So I'd love to just encourage, like, technology companies again, where is the true value on the project? And that is with the people who are putting in work, who are installing these parts and pieces of the building. Like, anything else, managers, project executives, BIM folks, I love you, but you're only supporting the people who are doing the work. Realize that, like, you are nothing. Like, nothing, zero, without those people who are going to do this in real life. Like, you may be able to build one heck of a model in the virtual land, and that's going to become more and more important when we get to the metaverse and, all these NFTs, and that's great. But guess what? You're still going to want a builder to build you a nice, comfortable environment so that you can experience that virtual building that you're doing. And so whether you're, whether you're a doctor that's healing people or a teacher that's teaching or a judge instilling justice, like nobody, society cannot operate without the trade workers who have come before them to establish an environment so that they can do what they do best. And society, we got a problem. We don't value those people. We don't respect those people so much that they don't even respect themselves. When you ask a worker in the field about the work they did, like an electrician, they'll be like, yes, I ran those lines, that conduit's so perfect. And they come to the wall and they hit a 90, they go right down. And when I made my terminations, they're so beautiful and pointed and labeled. And but when you ask them, what do you do? And you're not in the construction industry and you're outside in society, those people are like, oh, I work in construction. Right? Like they're not as proud of their career as they are of their work. And so to me, we've got to find a way to utilize technology to really help those people in the field to do their work with more passion, with more energy, and to be proud about it outside of the gates, right? Because it's not something we can just leave at the gate, right? I'm sure you've heard this too, right? Leave your feelings at the gate. Well, that's not real life, man. It's just not real life. And so, you know, as leaders in construction, we've got the responsibility to really get to know the people doing the work who, again, we talked a little bit about this before we got going. They don't usually look like me and you, Cody. And so sometimes that's hard to go out there and build a relationship with somebody who has diversity of thought compared to what your experiences are. And so it's uncomfortable. But when we fight through that fear of being uncomfortable, we start to learn and grow as a human. And then we can start to adjust the way people see this industry so that we can take and develop this virtuous system because this vicious system is literally killing people and it has to stop and it will stop. And it's going to stop with people like you and me and everybody listening to this podcast who's going to take an action item out of this to go and meet somebody in the field who is changing society and help that person be more prideful of their work and just help them integrate into society better because without those people, this world doesn't exist.
Adam, I wanted to thank you for joining me. It's been a great conversation about lean principles, the industry as a whole. Been great to see you again after all these years. Hope to see you in the near future. And want to thank everybody for joining us on the BIM Heroes podcast. Thank you, Adam.
Back at you, brother. Hey, I am freaking super excited. I'm so proud to like see where you're going with like where you're at and just I love following your career, man. Again, I'm here. I would absolutely love for you to come teach a class with me at Clemson. I know you come often to guest lecture for the civil engineers. Come give the construction students a little love. And yeah, I like just random calls, man. Holler at me. I'd love to continue to develop the relationship. I got total respect for what you're doing and the path you've forged and just your maturity in the industry is so freaking cool to see, man. So congratulations on just forging your own path. And yeah, I look forward to getting to know you deeper as we move forward.
Thank you, Adam, for all the assistance and thank you for the kind words. Thank you.